590 KXSP Omaha's ESPN Radio. It's time for the Front Stretch, brought to you by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Online at joeskarting.com.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning. This is the Front Stretch presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Booking prices, hours, it's all located online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. You can give them a call, 712-256-5278. And I couldn't think of a better day to get out and have a little bit of fun. Get down to Joe's Karting and get yourself some fast-paced white-knuckle racing. Now, good thing is you're hearing this Sunday morning, 8 a.m., so you've got a little bit of time. Get yourself some food in you. Get recovered from last night. Get over to Joe's. I believe you guys are opened up at
noon.
At noon o'clock today.
Noon to 8.
Get over to Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. The easiest way to get there, Google it. Head over to the website. Check out the physical address. But get yourself some racing in. We've been talking about it all year long. Absolutely love going to Joe's. Have a great time every time I go there. And, so I'll be honest, I've had people say, $13 to pay for a race, that's kind of a lot of money, but the second they step out of that cart, they tell me the same thing every time.
Oh, we hear every day.
Totally worth it. You go once, you're going to get addicted. So Joe's Karting is kind of like my little crack dealer.
Yeah. Except you're getting high, I'm going slow.
You're more of my downer dealer because I go slow.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the Front Stretch. We got a heck of a show lined up for you, and I tell you what, this has been an exciting week for us. A little bit behind the veil. We record this show typically on Wednesday nights. Andrew, Bud, and I jumped in the studio, recorded the show. Then I found out Thursday when I started to put the show into our computer systems, we had a bit of an issue. So Buddy and I are back Friday morning to re-record Turn 1, and that's the reason why you don't hear Andrew. But you will hear Andrew in the other turns. Turn 4, we're going to sit down with him and talk about how the chase landscape has rolled out and some of the difficulties some of these teams are seeing in the chase and how incredibly difficult it's going to be for drivers like Jeff Gordon, for drivers like Matt Kenseth and Martin Truex Jr. to make up those points that they've lost because they're kind of behind the 8 ball as it is.
We'll talk a little bit about Dale Jr. Is he right now at the bubble? Listen to Turn 4 for that.
That's all for Turn 4. In Turn 3, more technical issues, but trust me, you're going to get the meat of the topic. We're all just going to sound a little weird when we're talking, which is...
You already sound weird.
I guess that's kind of on par. We sit down with the gas man, Jack Dover, driver of the number 53 ASCS Sprint car, and he is now a 3-time champion. We're going to talk to him about what it's like to be a 3-time champion for the ASCS Midwest Division, his plans for 2013 and his aspirations for is he going to be able to step up, not be able to, but is he going to get the opportunity to step up and come up to a higher series like the World of Outlaws, maybe even step up to some asphalt racing with ARCA or a modified
ASA, something like that.
So we'll talk to him about that. In Turn 2, the Fast 5, it's 5 stories that are dominating the NASCAR world, and there's been quite a few stories that have broken this week, so we'll get into all of that. But before we get into the other turns, let's break down Turn 1, brought to you by the Auto Connection in Lincoln. 21st and P Street is where you need to go to get your preventative maintenance. People always get worried when they take their car to a mechanic because they find those little things that are going wrong. It's not a ploy to get you to spend money. It's because they're telling you, okay, the reason why your steering wheel has a lot of give in it is because your ball joints are going out. And yeah, it's going to cost you a lot to get those fixed, but I had a ball joint fail while I was driving down the interstate. I watched as my tire went off to the left and my truck dropped down and I just ruined everything in my front suspension. I had to get it all replaced. If I'd have listened to my mechanic and got my ball joints replaced when they told me to, I wouldn't have been out $2,500. I'd have been out $400 for a ball joint.
If you'd only listened.
If I'd only listened and listened to us, get to Auto Connection in Lincoln, 21st and P Street. Talk to Kevin and the great crew down there, and they're going to get you your preventative maintenance and make sure you stay on the road and you don't have any big costly repairs. 402-477-8200. Well, the Sylvania 300 at New Hampshire Motor Speedway is in the books, and I think we saw what we were all expecting as far as Jeff Gordon was concerned. Gets himself the pole, has an extremely fast car, and we all kind of thought, hey, this could be Gordon's coming back. He's had his mulligan. Last week at Chicagoland, he had his bad race, so maybe he's getting over this. And we also see lined up on the outside of him, Kyle Busch. I thought it was kind of interesting to see these two guys lined up on the outside of, or lined up next to each other, because just 2 races ago they were battling to make it to the chase. Kyle obviously did not make it. Jeff obviously did make it, and now we're seeing Kyle maybe a little bit of hard charging, I guess is what I want to say, because he's got nothing to lose. I mean, maybe a position or two, but as far as he's concerned, I think he's going to have 13th place locked up by the end of the season. But I think he's got a little bit of, I missed the chase, and Gordon, I don't think you deserve to be in it, so I'm going to show you by lining up. But he lines up on the outside of Gordon, second pole position, so a great race for both of those guys. Actually, I want to take that back. Kyle had a great race going, had a great car going, but a third race this season where they have engine issues. The engine never does go, but they drop a cylinder, and they're able to kind of nurse it around the track for, I believe, a 28th place finish. So what is going on with that team? Is there just bad juju in the 18 team?
Oh, I think there's bad juju. They're going to be looking at their engine program, their R&D, the whole, as a whole, they're going to be looking at everything.
Do you see Dave Rogers on the pit box for the 18 team next season? Do you think, let's face it, this has not been a typical Kyle Busch year.
Yeah, but is Dave Rogers responsible for building that motor that's in the car?
Now, Dave Rogers was the one who made the call that was the final straw that broke the back that lost them their position in the chase. You know what? When you sit there and look at the fact that Kyle Busch has made the chase several times, has been competitive, and at times he's just been the best car out on the track. I have not seen that this season.
No.
And when you look at that, you look at the captain of the crew. And that's the crew chief, Dave Rogers.
These guys have a crew chief. They also have a team manager, and they also have a crew manager. So, and the team and the crew manager don't get talked about a whole lot. Everybody, because the crew chief's out there in the limelight. Now, when I'm thinking crew chief, Dave Rogers is telling these guys, put 2 more rounds of reg in it, drop the air pressures a half a pound. We may have to change a motor. If they don't have a season that's not up to par to what they're normally doing. If I was
you're not ready to pull the trigger.
I'm not ready to pull the trigger.
So you see Dave Rogers return.
Yeah.
I guess to bring up our 9-minute question or our 9-minute response. Yes, you do see Dave Rogers coming back as a crew chief for the 18.
Yeah, it ain't fair to pull the plug on him now.
Let's talk about Jeff Gordon, and we talked about it. Started on the pole position, had himself a great run, finished third, but only gains 2 points on the championship leader, and we're going to get into that more into turn 4 as far as
I'm curious
what they
about
need to
that.
do. That's insane to think. That just goes to show you how incredibly hard it is to win.
Yep.
We'll talk about that more in turn 4, but Denny Hamlin qualifies on
boy, did
on
he
Friday.
have a jet.
Not on qualifying. They made a mistake.
No, well, during the race, he was a jet, though.
Yeah, during both practices, from the second they rolled that car off the trailer, they were fast, and fast is an understatement. But they go out there to qualify, and they had a miscommunication, something that kind of seems to be plaguing this team, but it doesn't seem to be holding him back. They seem to have these miscommunications every once in a while. But so he qualifies 32nd, but he absolutely tears through the field. That was to me the most interesting thing about New Hampshire was watching Denny Hamlin lap after lap, picking up 2 or 3 positions and just kept rolling through the field. And it wasn't that he was back there in the sub-15s, and it's fairly easy for someone of Denny's caliber to get past those sub-15 drivers.
Oh, sure.
It was once he got into the top 15, he just kept knocking them down too, and nothing was holding him back.
If these cars are all V8s, he looked like he had a V12 in that thing.
No kidding. It was, and the funny thing was, he said over the radio that the car handled through the corners amazing, but it was along the straightaway that he had the worst time getting the car to handle. And that was
what?
I know. There was something to do with the toe of the car, that when they had it set up, it was going down the straightaway that he was almost wrecking. It wasn't during the corners; it was during the straightaways. So
if his toe's out, it's pulling to the left. Because I don't care if it's dirt or asphalt. The races are won in the corners, not in the straightaways. Nobody cares how fast you are in the straightaways, but in the corners, that's when you're 2 and 3 wide and you're slicing and dicing. But if he's almost wrecking the car going down the straightaway and there's a toe issue, that's telling me he's towed way out. And, it'll literally pull the steering wheel out of your hands at 150 mile an hour. Wow, I didn't realize that.
He was having a lot of trouble with it, but able to hold on to it and gets himself the win, and a big win too. absolutely dominated over the field. There is no other way to put it. Hamlin finishes with the win. He hoists a big trophy. Jimmy Johnson comes in second. Like we mentioned, Jeff Gordon comes in third. Clint Boyer brings home a fourth-place finish. Casey Kane fifth. Brad Keselowski sixth. Tony Stewart seventh. Top 7 drivers, all Chase drivers.
Not too surprising.
Joey Logano eighth. Brian Vickers ninth. Another top 10 for Brian Vickers in that 55 team. Ryan Newman 10th. And the other Chase drivers, Kevin Harvick finished 11th. Dale Earnhardt Jr. finished 13th. Matt Kenseth 14th. Greg Biffle finished 18th.
Is it just me, or is Harvick just kind of been like, okay, now where'd you go, Harvick?
Yeah,
where'd you come from, Harvick?
Yeah, where'd he come from, Harvick, for the last 5 years?
Yeah,
and
now it's like, where'd you go, Harvick?
You know, he's doing better with Gil Martin sitting back up on top of the pit box, but he's still not. He still doesn't have a competitive car. He's got a top 10, top 15 car, but that's not going to win you anything.
Yeah, but even if you are a top 10 or top 15 car, you don't really see him in the media a whole lot. He's laying pretty darn low. It's not like, it used to be Kevin Harvick would run 12th or 13th, and he could still make a wisecrack or a joke, and he'd be in the media somehow, some ways, indirectly. And you don't see that this year.
In previous years, he had a top 5 car. And he always stayed in the top 15 throughout the entire race, or the top 10 throughout the entire race. But then with about 10 laps to go, all of a sudden, he'd be there vying for the win.
Third, fourth, fifth.
Right. It just seems to be that something's off. And maybe we'll talk about that next week. There's a couple of drivers who were nationwide regulars the last couple of years, but have pulled out of the nationwide. Carl Edwards, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch. These guys come to mind. Guess who have had less than stellar years? So maybe we should talk about that in Turn 4 next week when Andrew joins us again. Does this pulling out of the nationwide, is it hurting these guys? But we'll get into more of that stuff next week. And before all that, we got Turn 2 just around the corner. It's the Fast 5 on the 5 stories that are dominating the NASCAR world. This is the Front Stretch presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
This is the Front Stretch on AM 590, brought to you by Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com.
Welcome back to the Front Stretch. This is Turn 2, presented by Joe's Karting at Council Bluffs. How's everything going down at Joe's Karting? I haven't been there in a couple of weeks.
Thank God.
Yeah, I know. You haven't had to fix any carts, have you?
Well, no. We didn't have to stand around for 3 hours waiting for one guy to get done with 16 laps. It's going pretty good. We got a lot of new people.
Well, if you listened last week, you heard us make references to how Buddy sounds like Buddy J from Jeff Dunham, and it's going pretty good. I'm sorry.
I'm in a race car.
This is horrible radio, but God, that just sounded so much like it. Get to Joe's Karting today in Council Bluffs. You can find directions by Googling them or going to joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. Give them a call, 712-256-5278. Fast-paced, white-knuckle racing where the only speed restriction is if you're behind me. It's time for the Fast 5 and 5 stories that are dominating the NASCAR world. First one up, Jeff Burton says that he feels secure in the 31 and that he was never worried about losing his ride. Now, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, the possibility of Richard Childress Racing picking up Kurt Busch, since it seems more and more evident that he won't be at Phoenix Racing next season. And there was 2 options for Richard Childress Racing: put him in the 31 or find another sponsor and put up another car in the circuit. But it doesn't seem like either of those were going to happen. And Jeff Burton came out and said that despite the fact that he's been struggling over the last couple of years in the 31, he never really did feel like he was going to be losing that ride. He says that he never woke up in the morning and said, geez, I may not be racing the 31 in 2013. He always felt pretty secure. Now, it is kind of funny. Richard Childress made a comment earlier this week. All he said was that we have a contract in place for 2013. That's it. So it kind of leaves the door open for 2014 and on as far as Burton is concerned in that 31.
Yeah, Jeff Burton's kind of getting up there in age, though, a little bit, where you could bring in some younger talent.
Here's the thing, and we talked about this, and we've heard a lot of people talk about this too. The reason why Clint Boyer left Richard Childress Racing last year wasn't because Michael Waltrip was coming after him and offering him this massive deal. It was because he saw the writing on the wall that he was going to get replaced by Ty and Austin, who are currently down tearing it up in the Truck Series and Nationwide Series. Those guys are going to be up into the Cup Series very soon. I think you're seeing the writing on the wall as far as Jeff's concerned, too.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
I think as far as it goes, when you're talking about the cars at Richard Childress Racing, you've got Paul Menard in the 27, Jeff Burton in the 31, and Kevin Harvick in the 29. Now, obviously, Harvick's not going to be out of that in 29. Way too talented of a driver. But I think there's a possibility that in 2013, you're going to see Austin come up and take over that 31 car, and then a couple of years later,
you're going to see Ty up there
taking over in the 27 car.
Absolutely.
I think Jeff Burton and Paul Menard's days at Richard Childress Racing are numbered.
Well, and it's no secret that Ty and Austin are, Richard's grandchildren. So are we maybe starting to see a shift where, maybe Richard Childress ain't going to have hired drivers? He's just going to kind of keep it in the family with Austin and Ty?
I think them being successful has absolutely nothing to do with Mr. Childress, giving them everything. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that he's their grandpa. They are extremely talented drivers.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of butt in there real quick because I know where they came from and where Richard put them into the super late models. Right when they've always had a coach. Dale McDowell coached Austin and Ty both when they were running 16 years old, 14 years old when they could. And I think if these guys don't have a coach in NASCAR like a Jeff Burton or like a Kevin Harvick even or somebody, they're not going to be as good as what everybody thinks.
Yeah, I can agree with that, but I guess my point was that they're not where they are just because they're his grandpa. It's not
Correct.
like they're wrecking every single weekend, horrible drivers, but yet he's still putting them in rides because that's his grandkids. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that he is just those two are just that talented. I mean, we're seeing it in Austin, his first year up in the Nationwide Series, and he's obviously recorded on Wednesday. The Nationwide Series races on Saturday, but he's contending for that championship. By the time this plays, he very well could be in the points lead over Elliott Sadler.
So you think he's just looking at Austin and Ty as you would any other driver, business-wise?
Yeah, there may be a little bit of family in there, but those guys are talented as hell. If they got rides in the Cup Series, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Not at all.
Fair enough.
Number 2, Brian Vickers hopes for a Cup ride next season. After Brian Vickers' 4th top 10 finish this season, which has been very deserved, he's done a very good job this season. He's ruling out a Nationwide Series ride, but is looking for a new Cup ride. Vickers has rumors that he's trying to take over the spot where Joey Logano left in the Gibbs ride, but currently Joe Gibbs needs a full-time Nationwide driver next season and has talked about it to him, and possibly a Cup ride in 2014 if sponsorship is correct, which is the main thing for every driver out there. If you don't have a sponsor, you're not going to have a ride.
Yeah, and Gibbs has talked about how he wants to expand to a 4th team if they can find the sponsorship, and I think we're seeing kind of this theme a little bit. We talked about the last 2 ones. There is a lot of talent down in the Nationwide right now. I think there is a lot of drivers, at least 10 drivers in the Nationwide running this year that we're going to see up in Cup in the next 5 to 6 years.
I think in 2 to 3 years, a lot of the Nationwide guys will be up into the Cup by that point, and I think the entire dynamic landscape of Sprint Cup racing is going to be way different, and it's going to be way more exciting.
It's going to be so much younger. I mean, look at who the guard is right now. Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Tony Stewart. These guys are getting up there in age. Jeff Burton, Mark Martin, Carl Edwards, Greg Biffle, Matt Kenseth. These guys are getting up there in age.
Greg Biffle's in his 30s.
No, he's not.
I thought he was.
No, they're all 40 plus. Now, I'm not saying that's old at all. I'm saying that when you've got someone like Elliott Sadler, well, that's actually a pretty bad example, but someone like Justin Allgaier, who's down there in the Nationwide Series doing well for himself. I think in the next 5 to 6 years, you're going to see a complete changing of the guard, and it's going to be a younger series. I mean, Ricky Stenhouse is making his way up. We just talked about Austin Dillon. Elliott Sadler's probably going to be up in the Cup in a couple of years. I mean, there are so many drivers down in the Nationwide Series, and we haven't even talked about the Truck Series yet.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there are some extremely talented guys who are cutting their teeth in the Truck Series and making their way up to the Nationwide Series. So I think we're going to see a complete changing of the guard, and that completely went off topic from number 2.
It happens.
Yep. All right, number 3. Elliott Sadler is close to signing a deal for 2013. Last week, Elliott Sadler announced that he would not be going back to Richard Childress Racing next season. Well, I think we all know why. Sadler has led the points in the Nationwide Series for most of the season in the number 2 car, but for reasons that weren't released, he will be parting ways with RCR after Homestead, Miami. In an interview with Sirius XM Radio, they're still in business, Sadler said that he frankly does not care about next season. He was working on winning a nationwide title this season. Not even 24 hours after the interview, it was being reported that he was close to signing a deal with JGR, as in Joe Gibbs Racing, for a full-time nationwide ride and a partial cup ride. And I would be the biggest Elliott Sadler fan. I don't care who he's driving for, but that guy is so deserving of a full-time cup ride, and I think this is just a transition into that full-time cup ride.
The thing is, he had one. How long ago? He was the number 38 M&M's car. Yep. Wasn't that for Gibbs as well?
I was trying to remember it the other night, and
I mean, he just had one. He's been back and forth so many times.
Yeah, but when I saw him run the nationwide car several times this year, it's not the old Elliott Sadler that I remember watching. The old Elliott Sadler, I'm not saying that he was a bad driver by no means, but he was more of a mediocre, 15th, 20th place car, almost like a male version of Danica Patrick. And I know that's a bad mental image, but she's a 15th, 20th place car. But now all of a sudden he's in the nationwide and he's running up front, and I think that run that he's got going in the nationwide right now has got him a boat full of confidence, so that when he goes to JGR and he's getting a partial cup ride, I think you're going to see that confidence come out that he has built up in the current nationwide ride, and he's going to be unstoppable. He's going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Just to clarify, he raced in the 38 M&Ms for Robert Yates Racing.
Yates, there you go.
I think Sadler is just simply a case of a guy who wasn't quite ready to step up to the Cup Series, and he was a little overwhelmed by it. Now he stepped down and ran in the Nationwide Series for several years. The thing I like about Elliott is that you listen to him talk, and he sounds, just so ungodly knowledgeable about the cars and has a better understanding. He just seems like he has a better grip on racing now overall than he did several years ago.
Now, it's not that he's an immature person, but as a driver, talent-wise, knowledge-wise, he's matured so much by taking a step back and running the nationwide. So now that when he goes next year and he's running nationwide with a partial cup ride, I bet you in 2014 we could possibly see him in a full-time cup ride in 2014.
On to number 4, Phoenix Racing. We haven't really talked about it. We've touched on it a little bit over the last couple of weeks, but James Finch said a couple of weeks ago that there is a very real possibility they would not be moving or they would not be fielding cars in 2013. I want to ask you guys a very simple question. He said that it's because, and I apologize, I want to backtrack a little bit. I don't want to make it sound like I think he's lying, but the statement was that we just cannot afford to field cars with the new car coming into NASCAR. We've talked about it before. All the manufacturers are doing some changes to the front of the cars to make them look more like the cars you buy on Monday at the dealerships. Finch says that he's not able to purchase new cars. From what I understand, the only changes between the 2012 and the 2013 car is the sheet metal work. Give me a percentage on Bud, your sport mod, and Andrew, your late model, a percentage of what the sheet metal costs.
Well, there's a lot more to it than that.
Just give me a percentage.
For a 4x10 sheet of aluminum is about $85.
Okay,
I was told $65.
Well, you can kind of get it. But my point is, when you got to buy new sheet metal for a car, can that really break the bank?
Well, sometimes if you ain't well funded enough, yeah.
Theirs is different. Theirs is a little bit different than ours driving down the road. Theirs is actual pieces and everything. When you got to buy them from a dealership, you know how a dealership works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they'll have a fab shop they'll get that stuff from Chevy, but
yep.
I got to kind of call foul a little bit on that.
I don't.
But I feel bad for James Finch and for Phoenix Racing because it's a good, they've fielded cars for a long time.
Let me put it to you this way. Andrew, you drive, super late models, SLMR series. Here back on the front stretch a long time ago in the Sling and Dirt, a long time ago, French Grimes and Smiley Sutton had mentioned, just in the modifieds, you could go out, buy a brand spanking new car right now. Within 6 months, it's outdated. Late models, is it kind of the same theory?
Well, yeah, 100%.
Well, absolutely. But now here's the deal. So a young man like Dan Taylor here sees a late model out there. You could have 10 late models. They all look exactly the same. But you got 10 different years there. Well, one could sit there and go, well, I could race the same car today with the same parts next year, but next year, as well as I do in the dirt track racing, we're always looking at the catalogs, the parts, we see what's coming out. They might have, and I'm just going to throw a number out there, $500 shocks in a Cup car.
Let me stop you because I think you're going into a direction that we're not supposed to be. Be understood. The core of these cars, everything about the 2013 car is the same except for the sheet metal. That is the only thing that changed. That I want to claim BS
thing.
On. That is the only thing. I mean, there may be some small changes here and there, but when we switched to the car of tomorrow, organizations had to go out and buy completely new cars. They had to buy new mounts, new types of motors, new frames, new chassis, new tires, new everything. That I can understand. The reason why NASCAR made this switch so quickly was because they are basically able to take the sheet metal off the 2012 and put the new sheet metal on the 2013 and go race.
So, okay, let me look at it from another angle. If they can't afford the funding, which maybe they, theoretically can't, how much of this is self-inflicted by Busch himself to the point that, I could take a sport mod out there. I could take a $5,000 sport mod, go put a championship quality modified driver, and he's going to run the wheels off the thing, which means I'm going through shocks, tires, rims, motors.
Well, I completely agree with you, and I know where you're going with that. At Daytona, the first race of the year, they went through 3 cars.
Yeah.
3 cars.
But now, had they not had a Kurt Busch and they would have had an Andrew Kazicki in there running 25th the entire race and not damaging nothing, they wouldn't have had to spend that extra money, up front that they
buying new cars and paying that extra salary. Let's face it, Kurt Busch is going to get paid a heck of a lot more than who was in the car last year.
Landon Castle, I think.
Yes.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
They paid. So
you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So, wow, this segment kind of got away from us. Let's get on to number 5, bud.
Kurt Busch signs with Furniture Row next season. Maybe they'll give him a free couch. One-time NASCAR champion.
I got a feeling says Kurt Busch doesn't need a free couch.
Well, you never know. The one-time NASCAR champion who's fallen on less than popular times has gotten a ride for 2013. As it seems that Phoenix Racing will not be running next year. Well, it'd help if you didn't blow motors. Busch will be replacing Regan Smith.
He did some... Good God! We just finished talking about the reason why it was because of salaries and destroying cars.
Well, anyways, Regan Smith in the 78 car, and he could even run a few races this year. With Phoenix Racing not being able to find funding after Talladega, that leaves the door open for Kurt to head over to FRR and get to know his new team and crew, which really may not be a bad idea late in the year.
Well, what did you just find out? Dan was talking to us about this.
Wednesday, as we're recording the show, I look up my news site, which is jski.com, and sure enough, here it comes. Smith out as the 78 from Talladega. They're reporting on Speed that Regan Smith, his final race will be at Talladega, which everything seems to be coming in line. I mean, obviously, by the time this airs, I think we're going to have a set story that Regan's going to be done in the 78 after Talladega because Phoenix Racing is going to be done after Talladega. They can't afford to race after that. So Kurt Busch is then going to jump over into the 78 and get himself some extra practice in the new team.
What do you think is going to happen to Regan real quick?
I think he's going to be looking for a job. He's a good racer.
Obviously, he's going to be looking for a job.
Okay, well, he's going to work at the Pizza Hut down the street.
No, Pizza Ranch.
There you go.
Well,
no, I think he's a really good driver. He's going to be fine. But
yeah, what's his chances of being picked up for a ride?
Cup ride, slim. I think
there's not enough left.
I think he's got a really good chance of picking up a nationwide ride.
If he goes to nationwide, do you see him coming back to Cup within the next 2 or 3 years and being even better than what he is now?
That's tough to say. I mean, we just got in talking about how Elliott Sadler did it, and I think that is a 1 in a million story.
I don't think anybody expects Kurt Busch not to have a ride, but sometimes you got to think about these guys like Regan that's out. What about these guys? So
well, yeah, I mean the economy has definitely put a crimp on a lot of these guys having full-time rides. There's a lot of really good drivers out there that have been forced to go down to nationwide. I mean, look at Brian Vickers. He had a full-time ride last year at Red Bull Racing. They closed the doors, and now he's racing a schedule.
And that wasn't even really his fault.
He scheduled 8 races in this season, and he's done tremendous in the races he's raced already. So now he's vying for a full-time Cup ride in 2013, and I think he's got a legitimate shot at getting one. That was the Fast five stories that are dominating the NASCAR world. We're going to wrap it up here and head over to Turn 3 and talk with Jack Dover as he sat down with us earlier in the week, and even earlier in the week, he won himself his third Midwest Sprint Cup Series championship in the ASCS division. We'll talk about that, plus his plans for the rest of the season and 2013. Don't miss it. I know you're not going to want to. This is The Front Stretch on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
You're listening to The Front Stretch on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio. Brought to you by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Online at joeskarting.com.
Welcome back to The Front Stretch. This is Turn 3, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Booking hours, prices, it's all located online at joeskarting.com. Karting with a K. Get there today. Get yourself some fast-paced, white-knuckle racing where the only speed restriction is how fast you are. We are into Turn 3, and that means the interview segment, and we're excited to be joined on the phone by the Gas Man, now three-time ASCS Midwest Sprint Car champion, Jack Dover. Jack, thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Thanks for having me. Feels good to be back on the show.
Jack, let's talk about that. Last weekend, you rattled off your third ASCS Midwest Sprint Car Championship. How does that feel?
Feels awesome. I mean, it feels really good to get a championship when you're not even expecting it, because we had intentions of going out and running with the national tour. In the beginning of the year, it just wasn't going our way. We didn't have any luck, and took that nasty wreck there at I-80. We're 10th or 11th in points, and just had to make a decision that night when I wrecked, and just had to pull out the national tour and race wherever. And ever since we've been doing that, we've been actually winning some races and finished a lot of top fives and ended up pulling the Midwest Championship off.
Yeah, I think I was looking at your stats throughout the season as far as the ASCS races were concerned, and not a single, you didn't finish outside of the top four all season long in the Midwest division.
Yeah, that's what me and Will, my crew guy, were talking about an hour ago. He was telling me, since we got this new Roush Yates motor in the car, we put it in a week before Nationals, and we ran top four with it every night. We ran 11 nights, and we would have been top three all those nights except for one night. So that says a lot for how we've been running lately and how good these Roush Yates are too.
Jack, the one thing I want to ask you is, everybody says, well, you dropped off the national tour, but now you're in the Midwest. You're running the Midwest Tour. Just because you're running the Midwest Tour, that doesn't necessarily mean that you've dropped down in competition. By no means. The Midwest is still incredibly tough for you.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, you got Brian Brown and Jason Johnson, and I mean, a lot of those guys come to these shows because these Midwest shows, they pay a lot of money, and they know there's a lot of good drivers here, and it's not easy by any means. I mean, Greg Baker and all those guys from up north. I mean, every driver out there is good. You never know who's going to win.
Okay, a lot of people have been asking. It's kind of a weird question, but you did clinch the championship by starting the heat race the second night. Did you take it easy in the feature that night, or did you just go out there and like to win just like every other time?
It's like another night to me. I mean, you know as well as I do. I mean, you're going out there to win a race every time you go on the track. So I knew a couple of nights before that's all I had to do is go out and win the heat race, but I didn't pay no attention to that. I mean, I didn't even think of the Midwest Championship when I was out there racing.
When you're racing and you're racing for a points title and a championship, Jack, when you come down to I know you said they're at I-80 those last couple nights. It was just another night to racing, but overall, does that play into your mentality in the long run over the season? If you know that you've got a good run at winning the ASCS Midwest Championship, in the Midwest Division or the National, I mean, does that really change, or is it still just, it is what it is? It's another race night.
It's just another race. I mean, I've learned over the past couple of years, I mean, if you think about racing for points, you end up doing worse. So when you don't even think about it or pay attention to it, and you just go out there and try your hardest, you actually do a lot better.
You talked about earlier in the season that you had decided to not run in the National Series. Can you elaborate that a little bit more as far as the decision process, and do you perhaps regret it by any chance?
I do regret it because, I mean, you're racing with the best drivers out there every weekend and getting to see the country. But, I mean, at my point right now, I mean, I'm funding this thing on my own right now, and I got a couple sponsors, Home Pride and Certified Transmission and Langfeld Overhead Doors. I mean, if it wasn't for them, I don't know where I'd be right now. But before we went to that I-80 race, I knew that was our final night to make a decision if we were going to run the national deal. And because we had to go out of the West Coast 2 weeks after that. And we're 10th and 11th in points. We kept going back and forth. And after that night, we took that nasty wreck, I said, that's it. We're not doing the national deal anymore. And like I said earlier, it's one of those deals where we pulled off and we started winning races.
I totally understand exactly what you mean right there. It basically comes to almost financial and kind of confidence both there. I mean, you're a good enough driver to know in the national tour, but when you just have one slip up like that to travel all over the country, it costs a lot of money. And I totally understand what boat you're in. And
it kind of hurts too because you go out on the racetrack and you want to race your hardest, but there's guys out there that have another car on the trailer and they don't care. They'll wreck you. And when you're out there racing, you got to think about, can I afford to wreck the car? It's one of those deals where if you don't have an extra car or the money to fund it, it's kind of tough.
Talking with Jack Dover, the gas man, driver the number 53 here on the front stretch on AM 590, presented by Joe's Karting. Jack, there's been a lot of talk about the 360s leaving Eagle Raceway. What are your thoughts about that? I know you've been a favorite of Eagle Raceway. It's been a favorite track of yours. The 360s aren't going to be there next season, so can you give us your thoughts on that?
I think it's a really sad deal. I mean, that track is one of the best tracks in the country I've raced at. And you can ask anybody out there. You can ask a bunch of the national guys. They'll even say it's a good sprint car track. And, I mean, it's just a sad deal. I mean, he's going to have a couple specials I heard out there for the 360s, but other than that, it's just going to be the 305s out there. Yeah. I'm sure going to miss it. It's going to be great to get those couple shows out there, but hopefully one day they'll get the 360s back there.
So right now with the race savers coming into Eagle Raceway, is it pretty safe to assume that we won't see the gas man in a race saver package, or will we see the gas man in the race saver package?
There's rumors out there that me and my sister are doing it, but we got a 305, but it's the 305 out there. It's a sealed motor. It's dry or non-dry sump, and my sister's motor is dry sump. So our 305 is not legal to run out there. We are not going to do it.
So you're not going to go and buy a 305?
No.
Speaking of Eagle, I know you got to run with the World of Outlaw series just a couple of weeks ago. Talk about running with those guys. I didn't get to see the results of where you finished, so can you talk about the race that night?
We ran with them 3 years. The last time they were there at Eagle, and we ran like 9th or 10th. And like a lot of people out there know, I get around Eagle pretty good. And I went there last week and said I was going to do pretty good, and we had the wrong gear for time trials, and that killed the rest of our night. And we ended up like 16th, I think, in the feature. And I don't know, it's just tough. I don't run with those guys a lot, and I don't run with the tires and the wing. And I didn't have the right setup and wasn't comfortable. But we're gonna do about 20 plus shows next year in the 410 deal, so I'm a lot more comfortable and can run up there with those guys.
You know, you're saying, you know, you want to run more comfortable with those guys. You are the gas man. I mean, there's no denying it. With that being said, after winning your third ASCS championship, are you any closer to getting to that point where you can run week in and week out and get more comfortable and maybe go out there and you know, throw the mud in Danny Lasowski's face or Steve Kinser's face?
Yeah, it's the time of the year right now where you're working on sponsors, and I've actually been working on a couple guys and a couple sponsors, and we talked about doing some outlaw shows and what our plans were for next year. And so far in our heads, we got we want to run the national ASCS series and 20 plus outlaw shows. So that's what we got in our heads right now, and it may change, but that's where I want to be next year.
What about the rest of the season? Do you have any more specials coming up, or where can people find you still at?
You can see our schedule at jackdoverracing.com, and then we're going to go down to Wheatland, Missouri this weekend for the Jesse Hockett Memorial, and then I think we got 2 weeks off, and then we go down to Texas and Arkansas, and then from Arkansas we head over to Arizona, and that's where we finish up our year.
When you go to Arizona, what's the date of the Arizona race? Is that going to be Canyon Speedway down there?
Yep. I want to say it's like in the middle of November.
So is that after the duel in the desert then?
Yeah, it's the week after that.
Oh, okay. All right, so you'll be on the road for like the next 45, 50 days.
Yeah. We'll be done racing in November, and then there's some talk going around, and I may go to Australia again and race over there for a couple weeks. Or
bring Brody back.
Yeah, he'll come back next year, a couple years later.
Yeah.
He'll be back.
Tell him everybody at the front stretch said good day, mate.
I'll make sure I tell him that.
Well, please don't. Please don't.
Well, Jack, how can fans find out when and where you're racing and how to follow you and stuff like that?
We got a Facebook page, Jack Dover Racing, there, and then we got a website, www.jackdoverracing.com.
Jack, you were starting to get into it a little bit. Talk about what you're going to do in Australia during the off season.
We're just going to go over there for a month or month and a half and run about, I think we talked about 18 shows, 15 shows, and there's a race over there. The Americans go over there and race it, and who's over there, they have a special show here next year at the Nationals. It's called the Classic, and whoever was over at Australia racing, they get to run that special show over at Knoxville next year at the Nationals.
Cool.
We plan on running that and come back and hopefully start our season out in Florida in January.
All right, and once again, where can fans find you? What's your website, Facebook page, that kind of stuff?
Facebook page is Jack Dover Racing, and then website is www.jackdoverracing.com.
All right, Jack Dover, the gas man, joining us on the front stretch. Thanks so much, Jack, for taking your time. We appreciate it, and best of luck in 2013. Can't wait to see you again.
Thanks for having me again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
2012 ASCS Midwest Sprint Car Champion and now the three-time ASCS Midwest Sprint Car Champion, Jack Dover, the gas man, driver the number 53 car. And to say we had technical difficulties, a bit of an understatement in that interview. God,
what do you mean?
I could not get buttons pushed enough to get that echo to go away.
Oh, good Lord. Now, see, I don't have an echo now.
Then I start, well, yeah, because it's something to do with the phone. It's just nothing I can control. I'm going to have to get the engineers on it, the guys who are way smarter than me. But get to jackdoverracing.com. You can check out where he's going to be. Cool of him to go over to Australia and do a little out-of-country racing. And I
wonder if he's known as the gas man over there or the kangaroo kid.
The gas man.
The gas man, mate.
You two just need to quit trying to do Australian accents. That's all it comes down to.
But it's so cool.
Well, Australian accents sound great, but you guys come nowhere close to sounding like an Australian accent.
Well, okay.
We'll be back with turn 4. We're going to try to get this ship corrected. Try to get this car, get a little wedge into it, and get her going straight down the front stretch again. This is The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
This is The Front Stretch on AM 590, brought to you by Joe's Karting, online at joeskarting.com.
Well, we're getting the signal of 1 to go as we head into Turn 4, salvaged by Kaziski Auto Parts. You're looking for quality used parts, get your car back on the road. Give an experienced salesperson a call today at Kaziski Auto Parts, 731-4592. You can stop by now, 50th and I Street and L Street, finally redone and looking good for a change. Right there in front of 50th and L Street. Just a little bit of a side road. Head down the road there and get yourself all fixed up.
Go see Andrew Kaziski. They call him Special K down there.
Well, yeah, because I'm special.
Well, he'll get you specials.
There you go.
There you go. That's right.
You're just a special kind of guy.
I am.
Team PRP is what Andrew's a part of. Premium Recycled Parts is what that stands for. It means they'll come with a lifetime warranty through Kaziski Auto Parts. Get yourself fixed up today at Kaziski Auto Parts, 50th and I, also 731-4592. Guys, let's talk about the infield report. Andrew, we've got a couple of things to talk about as far as the race went at Loudon and the chase standings. So let's talk about that. One thing I kind of posed to listeners before we left turn 1 was Gordon finished third, but only gains 2 points on the championship leader, who is now Jimmy Johnson. I think that's a testament to how incredibly difficult this is going to be. This isn't Johnson coming back from finishing 41st at Daytona, and he's got 26 races to make his way into the chase. And we talked about it when that happened, that it's going to be easy for him to get into the top 10 because all those other drivers, some of them are come-and-goers, and not a lot of them are nearly as talented as Jimmy Johnson. So it was easy for him to make up those points. Jeff Gordon is in a completely different boat. He is racing against the 11 other best drivers this season.
Well, you kind of look at it, especially these last 10 races, the chase cars seem to run up front. It's like the other teams aren't trying to compete because they don't want to screw anything up. So Gordon is in trouble. I think Gordon's still going to squeeze in the top about 7th, 8th area because he's that good and he's that fast right now. But it's going to be tough for him to gain on the leader. I mean, we do got Dega coming up, though, so you never know what could happen to Dega.
Exactly. And you talked about that, how the top 7 finishers from New Hampshire were all chase racers. The guys that are in the chase. Then the other ones, Harvick finished 11th, Earnhardt finished 13th, Kenseth 14th, and Biffle 16th. So let's talk about Hamlin and his run a little bit. the qualifying mistake, they came out there and ran on tire pressure that was set for the race. They had race trim tire pressure set on that car, and with only 2 laps to get qualified, you can't get enough heat in that to build up tire pressure, and so he rattles off a 32nd place finish, but everyone was still scared of him.
No big deal. It's just qualifying.
That says it exactly. Qualifying means very little in this sport anymore.
Exactly.
Especially at your super speedways, means diddly. The only thing that matters is the pole qualifier, because he gets himself, essentially he's set himself up for a bonus point.
And a good pit stop, Arkansas. It's about the only thing that it's good for to me.
Exactly. Did you guys get to watch the race on Sunday?
I didn't get to see it at all this weekend.
Did you happen to see at the end of the race, about 4 laps to go, the cameraman looking over the shoulder of Darian Grubb?
I think I remember it, but I remember exactly what the point of that was for.
Here's what happened. The cameraman climbed up on the box of the 11 to try to get reaction from the crew when Denny Hamlin won the race. There was a couple of laps left to go, so he's kind of getting up there, and they switched live to him. And you could see right onto Darian Grubb's computer screen where they've got all their information, all their stuff typed out. A few moments goes by, the crewman sitting next to Grubb realizes it and sets a piece of paper over the screen to block it. Grubb then turns around and puts his hand in front of the camera, and then when the cameraman starts to turn away, you can see Grubb motion to the cameraman, shut off your damn camera and quit showing what's on my screen. This has surprisingly been way too big of a conversation in the NASCAR world this week.
Yeah.
Why? Really? I mean,
is he hiding something?
I don't think he's hiding anything. I think there's just maybe a secret here, a secret there, but I don't understand where that secret is, because most of their information on there is, how much fuel do I got left? Am I going to make the race? Where are all my settings at? What do my tire pressures look like? Because they got all that calculated right there. But I don't understand exactly what would make them so mad about it. But you know what? It's their privacy, and they're not supposed to get involved.
Here's what I liken it to. Now, I don't know if you know him personally, but I know you've seen him, met him, maybe raced against him, Scott Bloomquist. Everybody in the racing world says that Scott Bloomquist has the car covers over his car. He doesn't allow you to take pictures of the cars. If you want to look at it, that's fine, but you ain't putting your head up underneath the rear quarter panel, and you're not going to be taking pictures of bird cages and stuff like that. Well, why is he doing that? It's the same thing that Darian Grubb's doing. He's protecting his investment, his time, his thought process.
His hard work.
So do I blame Grubb for doing it? No. Look at the NFL. When we're not deciding who won the Packers game on a Monday night.
God.
Years ago.
Look at the screenshots of the coaches. They cover their mouths up with their play sheets when they're calling them in.
Exactly.
Because teams will record that, read their lips, find out what plays they're calling, go back and look at the play, and that way they've got evidence to say, okay, whatever this play is they called off, it's a run play. Yep. So now we can do that. It's just like a second guy sitting on second base stealing plays from the catcher. And you see pitchers do this all the time when they're talking on the mound. They'll take the glove and cover up their mouth. This is nothing different.
But here's a funny thing about racing, and I think, Andrew, you got to agree with me on this one. So Darian Grubb doesn't want them to see, like you said, the notes, the tire pressure, springs, bar angles, or whatever, whatever they've got up there on that screen. The funny thing is, I could go copy my car after Josh Most. Bar angle for bar angle, tire pressure for tire pressure. Well, that's Josh's setup. I could get in that car, and it's not going to be to my liking. I'm not going to want to drive the car. But yet, somebody else could come in and use my setup and like it. It is so unique to each driver's preference that, I understand why he's covering up, but really, come on. I'm thinking, what works for you may not work for the next guy. These cars are so dialed into each driver's, preference when it comes to driving ability.
I agree with you, but I think what made him the most nervous was that Denny Hamlin was far and above better than everyone else.
Well, they hit on something.
Hands above everyone else. I mean, it was ungodly. And so for somebody like Chad Knaus or Dave or Steve Addington to look at those numbers and go, okay, they're running this tire pressure and this much wedge.
No.
Let's try it. Because let's face it.
No.
Someone like Earnhardt who did not have a good day, didn't have a bad day, but did not have a good day. Why not try it next time you go to New Hampshire and try that practice? Why not?
Addington and Canals know enough about these cars that I think if they want to...
I want to point out the fact that the 48 team had nothing. And you really think that if Chad Canals is sitting there going, okay, I finished second, you really think he's not going to look on that screen and try to get an idea?
No.
I do. I believe 100%.
No, I
You
don't.
don't win 5 straight championships by going, you know what? I don't need to look at what they're doing. I don't need to pay attention.
So you think they're winning their 5 championships by trying to emulate what the other teams are doing?
Not
If somebody's
emulating,
beating
but-
you at a certain track, you got to figure out what they're doing.
Exactly.
I understand that.
Exactly.
But you have to be realistic that, if I go race Jesse Sabine this weekend, tonight somewhere, ID, wherever, and he's beating me, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to go over to his car and try to emulate every little thing he does, because that car's set up for Jesse. The car's not set up for Bud. It's set up for Jesse.
Why not take it for your setup and then modify it to where it fits you? That's what we're saying here. You take it and put it to where Denny Hamlin had success with it, and Hamlin's got a different driving style than Jimmy Johnson does. But you make that your core, and then you go, okay, Jimmy,
as a baseline
go
setup.
and race it for 20 laps, and then tell me what we need to do to make you a little bit faster.
I don't think Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus right now could give a rat's rear end what's on that TV screen. They're a 5-time national champion.
They're not this year.
Not yet.
Well,
They
I'm
will
saying
be.
that I don't think Chad Knaus, and I'm not saying this is cheating, this is stealing or anything. I don't think Chad Knaus would pass up the opportunity to see what the winner had in his setup. I don't think it at all. I don't care.
Were you at the Silver Dollar Nationals? Real quick, I want to get off subject. Did you get to see the picture of Bloomquist guy take a picture of Burkhofer's car? Burkhofer has not raced much this year, but he's came out, won 2 big shows, and Burkhofer's guys are taking pictures with cell phones at what he's doing. They got pictures of it.
They walked up behind it and took a shot of
They took a shot of the car. Why? Bloomquist is way better than Burkhofer is, but why? Because Burkhofer whooped his tail at that track.
So after Sunday's race, guys, let's talk about the standings and the points. Again, we talked about Jeff Gordon only gained 2 points on the leader. Matt Kenseth falls farther behind. Martin Truex falls farther behind. Where do you draw the line as far as the guys going into Dover today are not necessarily that their hopes are over with, but it's getting pretty dark as far as winning the championship? Where do you draw the line?
I'm thinking right now, Harvick on back to Gordon, they're done. I think right now, Casey Kane to Junior. Actually, Casey Kane and Clint, they may have a shot. Junior, you're on the bubble. You need to do something today, step it up or something. If you don't have a win or a top 3, your chase is done.
I'm not drawing a line yet. I think about Clint Boyer on Ford. Those guys are going to be the top guys for the rest of the year, but Dega is still coming up where it could take 2 of those top guys out.
I completely agree with you, buddy. I think Earnhardt is right there on the bubble, but I think he's on the backside of the bubble. Unless he rattles off a couple of wins, and even if he rattles off a couple of wins.
He's still on the bubble.
Exactly.
Really.
I look at the top 4. Jimmy Johnson. I'm looking at the top 3. Jimmy Johnson, Brad Keselowski, Denny Hamlin. The ways those guys are running right now, I don't see them finishing outside of the top 10 in any races this year.
No.
Even at Talladega, I don't see them finishing outside the top 10. Today's race is Dover, the AAA 300 at Dover. Now, Johnson led himself 289 of those laps. Kevin Harvick came in second, Matt Kenseth third, Earnhardt fourth, Clint Boyer fifth, and Eric Almirola with the top 6 finish. So that's where the field fills out. Obviously, we can't really talk about qualifying because it hasn't happened in our time when we recorded on Wednesday. But Dover's incredibly difficult track to win at.
It's Jimmy's track, though.
It is.
He says he's happy for it, and he's leading the chase too early because he is fast.
Let's point out the fact that Denny Hamlin does not do good at Dover.
Nope.
Let's just look. Hamlin came away with an 18th place finish earlier in the year at Dover. Has a horrible time at Dover, but he feels more confident because he feels like Grubb has brought him a car that he will feel more comfortable on. Keep in mind that this isn't an asphalt track. This is a concrete track, which has a completely different feel to it. So we'll just have to see after this afternoon. Tune in next week as we're going to break down what happened at Dover today. We'll also preview Talladega as we go down to the Super Speedway and we get into the Good Sam's Club 500. I want to say thanks to Jack Dover for joining us today on the front stretch, talking about his career. Guys, what do you have going on this coming week?
Nothing.
Well, actually, since we pre-record, I'm going to be in Knoxville all weekend until Sunday morning, but it's going to be a good time down in Knoxville, and hopefully I get back, watch some racing.
Now, are you racing or just watching?
No. I got a cousin having a stag party there, and we're going to watch Late Model Nationals. It's going to be a good time.
Oh, okay.
Cool. As you guys have just around the corner at I-80, the Cornhusker Classic. Are you racing at that?
I will be. Every single night I'll be racing that, 2 different classes. So that's
the 12th, 13th, and 14th, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I just saw the payouts for today. So drivers, head over to the I-80 Facebook page because the payouts were released today, and that's a pretty penny.
Yep. I'm not actually racing. I'm not racing until October 12th, 13th, and 14th. There's a little race at I-80 called the Cornhusker Classic.
Oh, the one we just talked about?
Yeah, we got to get you out there. So
I'm going to be there.
You say that every single special.
I was at the Fall Brawl on Saturday. I came out. I came into the pits and hung out with Andrew.
Where were you Friday night?
You didn't make the show. He watched me finish forward.
Get over to I-80 Speedway. Check out the Cornhusker Classic. Get your tickets today. We want to say thanks to them for being a great sponsor of us, and thanks to you for listening to us. This has been The Front Stretch.